and Vincent. I hope Vincent's connection will be stable because he is on location at one of our provincial yeah, site offices, as I can say. And so, Yorick and Vincent, floor is yours.
Thank you, Hank. Hi, everyone. I hope everybody is able to hear me properly. I will first share the PowerPoint with all of you. Is that now visible?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, hi, my name is Yorick Karseboom. I am the coordinator of the Knowledge Center of Philosophy, the name of the science shop of the Faculty of Philosophy of the University of Groningen. And I'm also a teacher at the Faculty of Philosophy, where I teach several courses that are aligned to the work I do with the science shops. And Vincent, maybe you would also like to introduce yourself before we start.
Yeah, hello everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I have two laptops here. Try to log in on both of them, and I managed to make sure one of my better laptops works, but there the connection is bad. So I hopefully this Chromebook will do its job. But if you have any problems hearing me, then please shout out, and we will try to find an alternative route. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Vincent Hazelhoff. I'm the coordinator from the for the Science Shop Language, Culture, and Communication. We are the Science Shop for the Faculty of Arts, or maybe better known, the Faculty for Humanities. Um, we have around 16 bachelor programs at our faculty, and we serve around 5,000 students. So to give you a bit of scope for the work we do. And I also work within a network organization called WIJS. And there we work in neighborhoods. It's a community engaged learning initiative, so to speak, where we work together with students from all kinds of knowledge institutions, together with the municipality and the social workers on practical but also academic questions coming from society. So I'm now in Hoge Zand, one of the cities in the eastern part of Groningen. So if the connection is a bit better, it's because I'm in the neighborhood center.
All right, thank you, Vincent. Yeah, I want to start off by talking a bit about what we will be sharing with you today. So we'll be talking about our work as science shop coordinators and the connecting role we serve there within the science shop with society, and especially one aspect of society, namely the cultural sector. So first, in order to do that, we'll give a brief explanation of what the science shops are and how they operate. We'll keep that quite short, and then we'll head into some project examples that we did with the cultural sector in Groningen and share some insights that we've gained from these projects that we had together with these different parties. But first, it's also good maybe to give a bit of context about the cultural sector, what it means when I talk about it. We operate and live, and our university is in the city of Groningen, which is in the northern part of the Netherlands. It's a student city. I think approximately 250,000 inhabitants-ish, and a lot of those are students, but it's also a city with a very rich cultural scene, so to say. So there are different festivals, different music venues, theaters, and yeah, there's a lot of things to do there. One example that we will talk about later, for example, is the Eurosonic Festival, which is a showcase festival for European music. And then for a whole week, the city of Groningen basically becomes the one spot you need to be if you're in the music industry worldwide. So people from all over the world flock to our city to discover European bands and so forth. So just to give you a bit of a context surrounding that. And well, we work in the science shop. As we said, I'm a philosopher from my background. Vincent also works in the humanities, and we will also talk a bit about science shops and what the role of humanities within the science shops are. So science shops, you might think of the word, when you hear it, you might think of something that looks akin to this, some sort of dusty old little shop where you can buy all sorts of accessoires related to practicing science, but that is not what it is. Science shops are institutions that are connected, in our case, to different faculties that serve as a portal between the academic world, the research world, the education world of the university, and society as a whole. So how can we see that? Basically, we think about what the role of the university should be within society, and with the science shops, we recognize that the university is placed within a larger society and that it generates knowledge, but that this knowledge should also be usable and applicable to real life problems that find their origin in society as a whole. So the science shops serve as a place where organizations, NGOs, sometimes even businesses, but also individuals can contact the university with certain questions they might have that they do not per se have an answer on, that could lead to interesting research projects, but could also lead to interesting projects for students' education, for example. We have different science shops in the Rug, and well, Vincent is representing the humanities side. I'm representing the science shops of philosophy. So how do science shops in general operate? We receive questions. We receive these questions via email, via face-to-face conversations, via events, via all kinds of ways. These questions find our way to us, and then we see what kind of question it is, because not every question is applicable for a science shop project. We are in general looking for questions of a scientific nature that do not already have an answer in known literature or research, and also add something to society. So, for example, if a company wants to check a product of theirs, if it's working properly or something, we don't recognize that as adding to a certain aspect of society or providing helpful research for society. So we're more looking on more general questions that find their origin in maybe problems that are playing in a small scale in certain communities, for example. So when we receive such a question, we often go in conversation with these groups of people to articulate the question more properly, to define a research question, to really think what they're looking up and trying to get a project out of this. So we often do small scale projects, ideally with students. So ideal ways on how such a question can result into a project is, for example, if students can work on it in a course during their bachelor or master's, or maybe they can do an internship based on the question, or sometimes a master or bachelor thesis can flow from these questions, and the students thereby provide perspectives in the case of philosophy, because we philosophers do not really deal in answers, sadly, but mostly perspectives, but also in the case of other science shops, sometimes usable answers for these organizations that have these questions. So the first step is always in preparation, talking with these people and making sure everybody knows from each other what they want out of the cooperation. The second part is often the recruitment of students. Sometimes it could also be staff members. In rare cases, questions evolve into bigger research projects, but as you might all be aware, the bigger a research project gets, the more time gets over it, the more bureaucracy comes with it. And with the science shops, we really like to, do the short-term, impact-heavy projects that we can easily start. And then, of course, when you have recruited your students, we start the projects, and then, to give you a better idea of what these projects entail, of course, we will give some examples, because as science shops, for example, in the humanities, sometimes questions are a bit more I don't want to say more difficult to get to, but you can imagine, for example, that a lot of people more easily have questions regarding exact sciences, for example, than that an organization is consciously aware of some philosophical questions they might have within their organization. So as science shops in the humanities, there's a different pool of groups, of organizations that we often get our questions from. And one of these pools, a very big one, is the cultural sector, because the cultural sector has a lot of interesting questions that can lead to very interesting research projects or educational projects for our courses and for our bachelor's and masters. So we'll talk you through a few of these projects that we did. And Vincent will start with an example of the aforementioned festival Eurosonic Noorderslag. So Vincent, I'll give the word to you.
Yeah, so to add to the words of Yorick, it's also like sometimes a cyclical process, because then normally we have these small questions that are more agendizing the problem. There are a lot of questions that come bottom up from people who are just curious about some certain parts. I always mention an example of people who want to do research about women who give birth in baths. So and they said, oh, we were just testing some stuff with our own blood just to see how it works, but well, we have to have an academic approach to this a bit more. So these were midwives. So they sent the question to us, and we said, yeah, this is a perfect science shop a question. Like, there's not a lot of things known about this subject. Well, let's get cracking, and let's do some research about this topic. So normally the science shop questions are starting very small, but tend to grow out to bigger research projects a few years later. And it's a cyclical process normally, and with that I mean that when a question is done, normally they come to us with new questions, and this first example of Eurosonic Noorderslag is one of them. Yorick told already that Eurosonic Noorderslag is one of the biggest showcase festivals in the western part of Europe. They have an ambition to show people, to showcase new coming talents, and like festival directors, programmers, bookers, people who work in the music industry, producers, they all come through Groningen to check out the newest, hottest bands. So there are a lot of now very popular bands that started in Groningen, and it's also very characteristic for our city, like giving a stage, literally and figuratively, for young talents. It's very suitable for our city, where we have around 50,000 students. So the students make up for 25% of the whole population. And in the city center, it's almost 60 to 70%, to give you an idea. So we worked with Eurosonic Noorderslag on a very interesting, but also like quite challenging project. And the main topic was about inclusivity in the live music industry. So some of the policy people came to the science shop, language, culture and communication, with the question. They applied for funding to about research about inclusivity, and but they didn't get the funding, and they sent me the funding, yeah, the apply, how they applied for the funding, and I said, well, it's really too messy, too broad. So let's start small then. So what we did was we firstly had to look at what inclusivity really means. So we had to define the problem. That was the first step, of course, in these talks with Eurosonic. What do you mean with inclusivity? So it's also about chances for women, chances for people from the LGBTQ plus community, also chances for people who are non-white. But these three things are already quite big. So we said, well, like try to focus mainly on these chances for women in the live music industry. So the women who are on stage. So if you can do the next slide, Yorick. So this is Dua Lipa at Eurosonic. Maybe you know her. So we said, oh, maybe then we can look at the female performers at the Eurosonic Noorderslag Festival. So we asked one of the teachers from our masters in the music sciences to help us out in formulating the research question more properly. And he said, well, maybe you can look at lineups. So do a lineup analysis of this Eurosonic lineup. So if you want to be more inclusive, then you have to firstly look at your own lineup. And that's exactly what a few students did. We had two students, Dan and Juan Carlos, who were doing their masters about music sciences, and they applied to work on this project together with an internship. So if you want to click on the next slide, Yorick. So what they did, they looked at the whole lineup of the Eurosonic festival and checked with every performance if there was a male or a female performer there, and they just put everything in one database. So they looked at the gender distribution at first for the Eurosonic conference as a whole from 2016 to 2022. And there you can see, well, a bit more, you can see a development, so to say. So even a bit more female acts in the festival of 2022. But there's a remark because they put a stamp of female act on an act that has as less as one woman in the in the band. So if there was a band with 5 guys and one female, they were stamped as a female performer. So this graph still is a bit it shows a balance that there is still a disbalance, so to say. They also looked, and now it gets really interesting, they also looked at the acts that were booked through their exchange program. So they have like a European network from festivals all of Europe, and there they checked how many of these acts were booked, and is the balance the same as the Showcase Festival itself. And there they found out 83 of the bands that were booked through the exchange program were male, fully male. So there's a lot of stuff happening, but you cannot say, oh, these festivals are terrible. But you have to ask yourself the question: how does that? Where does this come from? Where does this big difference between these lineups in showcase festivals as Eurosonic and more commercial festivals come from? What are the ideas of bookers when they book an act? Are they conscious about this gender disbalance? Last year we talked about we did the full research path, and then we came to the question like what's next, and there it gets interesting, because now the student, Dan Patur, finished his master's, and he got a job at our university. So he became a teacher. And the teacher who helped him out, he said, "Oh, we really, really, really love this collaboration with the Science Shop and with Eurosonic. We are developing a new course called Music Industries and Lives, well, we will put project-based learning within our course." And as a science shop, we were very happy, of course, about that news. So we continued and said, well, we only have to look at Eurosonic itself, but also at partner festivals. So there were 2 teams of students last year working on a question about gender distribution in festivals like Eurosonic elsewhere in Europe. So what you see on the right graph, is the gender distribution of festivals like Bush in Budapest, Focus Wheels, Line Check in Italy, Sofia Live Fest in Bulgaria, Sziget, everybody knows Sziget, hopefully, in Hungary. And the more commercial it gets, the more gender disbalanced it gets. So one group took the lineup analysis to another level, and the other group of students looked at the ways bookers booked acts. And there were also some shocking results in those interviews, because some bookers were not really not conscious about the way they booked it. They said, and they are also like really in their old-fashioned pattern, like male acts. Well, this works, so why change? So there's a lot of things to be done, and we are planning a meeting in June to continue this research. They spoke with 5 bookers, the students. They interviewed 5 bookers from 5 different festivals, and unfortunately, all these bookers were also male. And they all said, even these showcase festivals in Europe, they said, well, we do have female bookers within our team, but none of these festivals had one female leading booker. So also within the organization itself, there are still some changes to be made, I think. If you want to know more, I can send you the website. We made a website with some more information, also with the report of this research. It's at this moment being updated. So if you have to wait a bit, then you will see the new updated version of this website coming in June. And if you want to know more about this, I will also talk about this on the Living Knowledge Conference. So yeah, that's it for now for the Eurosonic example. Yorick, if you can click the next slide. So hopefully you're writing all your questions down, and I'm still on a bit on time. The second part is also really fun. It's something we do for a few years now. I'm a historian myself, and in the masters of the history and heritage consultancy master, the students have to do a course named Atelier Living Heritage. And you can see the picture here. It's the bus museum in Hoogezand, where I'm now, where they showcase all kinds of old buses. Within the atelier, we work together with the Master of History, and students have to do an assignment with a small heritage organization. That can be small local museums, or sometimes a bit bigger museums. And the idea about this course is that the students will do a really small internship in duos at the local heritage institution to make a exhibition plan. And in this exhibition plan, they have to put in historical research, a budget plan, ways to finance the exhibition. So they will, they will challenge themselves to become a heritage professional or a museum professional. Because a lot of these students will work in the heritage world and maybe become a curator in the future themselves. So we, as a science shop, are like these intermediates between these local heritage organizations and the history program of the University of Groningen. And if you can click the next slide, Yorick. Yes. So we work together with all kinds of heritage organizations. Those are sometimes like the Bus Museum. It started out as like a collection of or a hobby, and it grew out to be an institution where some people get paid. But we always say in the Netherlands, 1.5 guy and a horse head. Small, almost voluntary collections, but also quite nice places like this monastery in the eastern part of Groningen in Ter Apel, where there is a very nice monastery that, but it still lacks a bit of historical knowledge, context, also historical context for their organization. So that is what the students are trying in this course. And if you can click the next slide. This is a bit how it works. So we created this to give a bit of an overview also for the museums, who's involved in what, because it can get a bit complex. So the teacher supervises and grades the project, it provides theory and framework, and arrange guest lectures. Museums, they provide, of course, the location and concrete research questions. They also, and that's what I'm very happy about, they also co-grade the project. So sometimes the end product, the exhibition plan, is like is academically quite good, but the collaboration was crap. And then the students will get an 8 from the teacher and a 6 from the museum, and the final grade is a 7, to get an idea. But so this is also about professional skills and about academic, putting your academic skills into practice. The museum also helps the students find their way in the organization. So if you, it's also good for the museums, because if you get a talented student in your organization, maybe they will stick around to be an educational project leader or a curator or whatever. The student, of course, does an internship for a day in a week at the location, so they have to travel east to the eastern part of Groningen. Sometimes they say, "Oh, it's a very far," but well, it's normally not more than an hour. So we also have to manage their expectations a bit, and they do research for this museum within the archives or within the organization itself. And at the end, they produce a bid book, a professional booklet for museums to hand in to the province to get a funding or whatever. And last but not least, the science shop, we supervise the project process. So we will keep an eye on the process if everybody is happy. And sometimes we have to step in when people are not doing what they promised. So and we also provide expertise in project management. So also how to translate your academic knowledge to something that is applicable for the organization itself. So last slide for my part, Yorick. Hopefully we have some room left for questions later on. So these are the pins we put in for the organization we already work with. So we cover the whole region, so to say. And there are still organizations coming through. There are more to be added this year. So this is from last year, I think. So that's my second example. I will give the floor to Yorick now to do the last part of the examples. Hopefully I'm not too much over time.
All is well, Vincent. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'll give some examples of different projects we've done with the Knowledge Center of Philosophy and different cultural organizations. So the first example I want to start with is two courses that we teach at the Faculty of Philosophy, one on the bachelor level, which is called Philosophy Outside the Walls, and the second on a master level called Philosophy Beyond Academia. These courses are very much related to each other. What you're seeing on the picture is a play by the Southern Theater Company, in the Netherlands, during the Night of Philosophy, which I will talk a bit more about later. But in the Groningen, we have a theater called het Grand Theatre, and this is a theater that focuses mainly on plays that do not only entertain, but also send a message. This can be any message, but it's more plays with more a political nature sometimes, or an activist nature, but not just merely entertainment. And one of the companies that often has work presented there is the Southern Theater Company. And the Southern Theater Company reached out to the Knowledge Center of Philosophy with a question regarding the interpretation of plays. So they often reinterpret old plays from, for example, this play where they reached out to us was a play by the French playwright Molière. And Molière wrote plays that were critiquing the society of that day and age. But this is hundreds of years ago, or I'm not sure exactly how much, but not a society comparable with ours at the moment. So they want to reinterpret old plays to put them in a modern context and then send a certain message to the audience. But of course, being theater and the nature of theater, what the playwright wants to reimagine and what they want to send cannot or does not necessarily have to be the message that the audience will take away from this. So they reached out to us with this question, and I found it to be a very interesting question to think of from a philosophical standpoint. So we thought on different ways in how we could incorporate these questions, and luckily we have these courses quite new that are taught by the coordinators of the Science Shop, so me and my colleague Mark Bowley. And in these courses, the students are basically tasked with these philosophical research questions, and then they have to make a project themselves wherein they provide a perspective on the question. So like I said earlier, due to the nature of philosophy, it's very difficult to give absolute scientific answers because that's not something we philosophers try to do, but we can give different perspectives on how you should or could look at such a thing. So, for example, during the course Philosophy Beyond Academia, the actors actually came to Groningen, and we had the lecture not in the lecture hall of the faculty, but in the Grand Theater. And the actors were live rehearsing in front of the class and asking, like changing small things and asking the students how they were interpreting what they were seeing in the rehearsal and what thoughts it conveyed with them. And well, we were basically checking how those were aligned with the thoughts they wanted to convey to the audience, which was a very interesting workshop slash lecture, which was also very nice for the students to actually have some tangible context to actually apply their philosophical knowledge to, because often what we philosophers do is we dive into books, we read a lot, and then we talk in groups of philosophers about the things we read. But it's very nice in order to actually talk about something that is happening in front of you and that's tangible and not only theoretical. But this was only for one lecture, so this didn't really lead to that much research or anything very applicable, except for some new perspectives for the actors. So also for the course Philosophy Outside the Walls, students work for a semester. So for approximately 4 months, they work in groups of 4 to 5 students on a question. So the question that the Southern Theater Company provided was like how do we deal with the yeah, how do you say, like the muddy waters between the interpretation of the playwright, the interpretation of the actors, and the interpretation of the audience. So 5 students worked on this project, and they first did some philosophical research. So they decided to apply philosophy of art theories by Theodor Adorno, who's famous for his ideas of art and how it's worked, but also the interpretation of art. And there's a thought experiment he introduces about a hypothetical museum with 5 identical paintings. They're all red squares, just plain red squares. And you are asked to think if there's difference between the paintings, and then gradually you'll get more knowledge about the painting. So then you're introduced like, well, every painting is actually made by a different person. Are they now different paintings? How do you interpret them? Then some of the paintings are given titles, some are not. And basically this is to test how people interpreted art and how it conveys ideas within them. And then the students actually went to the play when it was played in the theater in Groningen, and they interviewed the playwright, they interviewed the actors, they interviewed audience members, and thereby they gathered intel and information about the interpretation of the plays, and they were actually able to provide like a small booklet with advice and different perspectives from philosophical theory, how one could look at the interpretation of plays, and also adjust maybe if they wanted their place on this idea. So it's just one of the examples of having a philosophical question that is actually applicable for students that comes from a place where you maybe would not expect it to be. And it's also, we as philosophers do struggle quite a bit with the role of academic philosophy in society. And a lot of our students are very unsure what they can do with their philosophical skills when they graduate. For example, the most common thing people will do is either pursue a PhD and try to pursue an academic career, or they'll work in bars, because there's not a philosophy factory where you can go and wave your beautiful bachelor degree of philosophy around. So it was actually really nice for the students to get a feel like, oh wait, with these skills and this knowledge I'm attaining during my studies, there's also room for me in other sectors that I might not be aware of at that moment. So this is one of the examples where society, a part of society, an organization, in this case the Southern Theatre Company, reached out to us, and we were able to create worthwhile and meaningful education for the students, and also giving something back to the theatre company. But another way in which it's really nice to, well, I want to say make use of, but connect and work together with the culture industry, is also that it can help, for example, with knowledge valorization and sharing knowledge and research. So another problem academic philosophy kind of suffers of is that sometimes it's being said about academic philosophy that we reside in an ivory tower. What academic philosophers write about is often very vague. It's very difficult to grasp if you're not an academic philosopher what the papers published are about. And some people can say that it maybe has a bit of an elitist status to it, or that it's people thinking about problems that are not relevant for direct society. So it's often very important to show what we as philosophers do to a bigger audience. And in the Netherlands, we hosted in Groningen this year the 12th edition of the Groninger Night of Philosophy. And this is an event that we organized together with Studium Generale, the part of the university that does more open lectures to the public, and the Forum Groningen. And the Forum Groningen is basically a huge building in the middle of the city center that houses a lot of different cultural places. So there's a huge cinema in there, but it's also where the library is. And there's, well, it's just, basically a public area, a forum where everybody is welcome. And it's, the big beating heart of the culture of Groningen in a way. Together with them, we organized the Night of Philosophy, and this is every year turning out to be a bigger and bigger and bigger event. It sells out weeks before the actual date, and this year we had over 900 tickets sold for the Night of Philosophy. So there were like 900 people coming to the forum to listen to academic philosophers talk. Yeah, you cannot believe it, but it's really nice because, of course, we invite like the more known philosophers. For example, here's a picture of Graham Harman from the United States, who is a very well-known philosopher, but also other, well, I want to say famous Dutch philosophers. But there's also a lot of room for us to program our researchers, our students, and our PhDs, and they can actually share their insights and their knowledge and what they're being taught, what they're writing about with a bigger audience. And in that way, make philosophy as an academic field more accessible to a broader audience, and hopefully, destroying the identity or the perception of academic philosophy as an ivory tower. And one last example I wanted to talk with you about, we've talked, and Vincent as well, about these different ways in how we can incorporate these questions in education, in research, in stuff like that. But sometimes it's difficult to apply questions in these formats, because one thing that we'll also maybe talk about in the lessons learned if we have time, one challenge with working with the cultural sector is that it works on a very different scale than, for example, the academic world. So festivals and these cultural institutions, they work in really short bubbles of a lot of work. So, for example, when a festival happens, it's like 3 weeks of mayhem, but before and after that, there's not that much going on. So if you want to incorporate that in a course that's taking 5 months, or if you want to put a student internship on that, they might not have enough to do for the whole span, because the span of the internship takes a year, while the interesting academic work that can be done at the festival will only be at the festival itself, for example. But we do get very interesting questions that I think are still worthwhile pursuing. So that's why me and my colleague Mark are now experimenting with something we call philosophical hackathons. So you might know what a hackathon is, where people try to create a certain computer program or try to solve a certain bug in a software computer system or anything in a very short amount of time by just putting everyone together and working on it. Philosophical hackathon is kind of the same, but then there is a group of philosophers that try to provide a perspective or an answer on a philosophical question in a day or in a few days by just being present at the place and talking with people and working on it. So what you see here are some of my students sitting in the canteen of Vera Groningen. Vera Groningen is one of the oldest pop venues of underground music in the world. If you like any band, there is a very, very big chance that they've played in Vera at some point in their career. And Vera has had the same booker for almost 50 years. And a few years ago, this booker went with retirement and a new booker was introduced. But because Vera is such an icon in the underground pop world, a lot of the identity of Vera was connected to this booker. And there was a very fixed perspective on what Vera's identity was. But the new booker also wanted to take things in a new direction and modernize a bit. So one of the questions that came up to him was what inclusivity and diversity, terms that also came up with Eurosonic, actually mean in the context of a underground pop culture podium. So, for example, if we look at like different conceptions or definitions of inclusivity, is like making some place approachable for as many people as possible. But if you're a stage that focuses on a certain aspect of music, in this case underground music, so think about punk music or garage rock or anything metal, you probably won't program reggaeton or house music. So you're not being inclusive to those groups of people in a way. But of course, it seems weird that, inclusivity should entail for a stage like Vera that they should do this. So anyway, the interesting question from a philosophical standpoint, and something we philosophers often do, is trying to come up with definitions or be critical about definitions and see what they mean. So we did a philosophical hackathon where students just went to Vera, went in to interview different people talked with a lot of people and just tried to get a conversation going about what diversity and inclusivity mean in the context of this specific podium. In the end of the day, because we did this one day only, and it was like the students were there for 4 or 5 hours, so obviously they weren't able to draft like a booklet or anything for Vera to be like, well, here are our recommendations. If you do this, you'll be diverse and inclusive. But a lot of the employees did say that it was very worthwhile and very nice to just talk and think about such a thing with each other, with students, and yeah, get a broader perspective on the possibilities and the implications of concepts like diversity and inclusivity in the context of such a stage. And we're also now making a hackathon with Eurosonic Noorderslag, which will happen in January of next year, where we'll have thinkers of the festival, where students are invited to the festival to immerse themselves in the festival, to go see gigs, to go to the conferences, to basically experience all of it, and with one question that they have to take with them, and that is what the role of a festival should be in society. So it's a very open-ended question, but it basically is just asking these philosophy students to use their philosophical skills to, yeah, think about a question that maybe we normally don't think about, like what should the role of a festival even be? Is it just to entertain the masses? Is it to pinpoint certain problems in society? Is it to provide jobs for a lot of people? Like what would it be? So that is a new experiment we're engaging with for the next time. And with that being said, I would like to go to some of the lessons we've learned. I see we have about 10 minutes left, so maybe we do this very short. I'm not sure how many questions there are, so I'm also a bit looking at Hank, but maybe would be a good way of going through with this. So
Just do this.
yeah.
Throw your conclusions, and then we'll see. And if we need some more time,
Yeah,
just see.
cool. So yeah, so Vincent, shall I talk about this and you do the next slide, or?
There's one question already from Leonie. If it's a short question, we can do it now, or
we can do it later. No, we can do it later.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Okay.
So yeah, lessons learned. One of the lessons learned, which is I think a really big benefit of the culture. Sorry. Oh, thought I heard something. No. One of the benefits.
Yeah.
Oh, I think. Vincent, are you trying to say something? No? Okay, then I'll continue. One of the benefits of working with the cultural sector is that they're typically more open to experiment than, for example, if you're working with a question from the municipality or from government organizations or other institutions, is that they're often, yeah, the cultural sector is very creative, but they're also very open to just try out things and try out new ideas. And yeah, the nature of the work at the science shops is also sometimes a bit more like, let's just try and see if things work. And that really helps with getting on the same level when you engage with these cooperations, because for example, when you let students do the research, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. Students can stop with their studies halfway. They can decide that the course is just too much and that they want to retake it next year, stuff like that, which will mean that people that are expecting a nice answer to their research question suddenly do not get anything because of the nature of these ways in which we work together. But usually the cultural sector is way more lenient to that, and it's way more easy to get the expectations on the same level. Vincent, would you like to go through these next points? If you're still here. Vincent? I'm not sure if he's hearing me. No? Okay, then I'll continue. So another thing is what nice is about the cultural sector is that it draws a lot of audiences. So your scope of people that can be engaged with the research can be very big. For example, the students doing research at the theater play also got to speak with all the different audiences, and you have a very broad perspective on different people, different backgrounds that come to cultural events. Of course, there's always, certain groups that will not often find their way to cultural events. So it's good to keep in mind that you are surfing within a certain bubble, but within that bubble, there's also a lot of diversity that you can, use as a living lab in that say. So the reciprocality. So it's very nice to create cooperations where your students can provide new knowledge or new perspectives for the professionals in the cultural sector, but also they give something back to the students. So this often works with them providing the questions, but also, for example, being open for interviews with students or letting inviting the students over to sometimes rehearsals or to the festival grounds or stuff like that. So it works both ways, and it really is a process wherein all parties are benefiting from the collaboration. And that is another plus about the cultural sector. There's a lot of intersectionality. So, for example, Eurosonic Noorderslag, it's a music festival, but they're also thinking a lot about what a durable society should look like. And in the Groningen, we're experimenting a lot with hydrogen and the future of hydrogen. So they also have a conference part, and there's a lot of interest also in how hydrogen can power things behind the scenes for festivals, for transportation, for stuff like that. So they're not only focusing on the entertainment aspect, but looking at culture and festivals as a bigger part of a bigger society with different domains. And this intersectionality, it's really nice to be part of that. To maybe open doors. Oh, sorry, that might be obvious from what we've been talking about, but we're really looking at, trying to get challenge-based, project-based learning in our curriculum, and these long-lasting collaborations with the cultural sector make it really worthwhile and make it easy to show that challenge-based and project-based learning within the curriculum. For example, also in philosophy, it's something completely new. It was a bit weird for colleagues to see that, we're doing philosophy in a practical context, so to say, but that it works and that it's worthwhile to pursue. And strategic partnerships basically entails that often there's a lot of recurrence. So it's easy to, when you work with these cultural entities or organizations, to get lasting cooperation, so that are not only incidental but can be repeated for more times. So I think that is enough talking from me for now. I'm not sure if Vincent wants to add anything, and I would love to hear if there are any questions. And thank you for your time.
Thanks, Yorick. Vincent just notified us that he has a very bad connection. Yorick, if you can stop sharing your screen, we can see each other. And then Leonie has raised her hand. So Leonie, you have a question.
But I think it was probably a question for Vincent. I'm not sure. It's a bit of side note as well, because it's not about engaging with the cultural sector, because I was very interested in the example he gave in the beginning with the midwives. I didn't quite get the research question, but anyway, I was interested in how do people approach you, because with the cultural sector, it's more clear to me that they might get an idea of contacting the university or music department with a question. But like in case of the midwives, how did they come into the science shop?
Well, I can answer the question also because Vincent has a very bad connection. So we also have a science shop at the University Medical Center. and they have contacts with like these professional, semi-professional organizations. So that's the way that this question came in, and then it was a collaboration, I think, also with people from the science faculty to look at if there's ways to measure blood concentration in water, also with technical skills. In the end, they arrived at the conclusion that more training to estimate from the thickness of the blood that you see in the water, how much the loss has been. So it's now referred back to the training programs for midwives to train people more, because then you can actually make an educated assessment of the blood content. We do have a short video of this project, so when I send the slides of this lecture, I will add the link to this video as well to it, so you can see this specific example as well that our colleagues at University Medical Center did. And if you want to know more in general about science shops, I gave a webinar on that that's still available as a video recording on the Engage Public Engagement website. Enlight Public Engagement. Ben, you have a question.
Thank you for the presentations. I'm happy about the science shops and envy the science shops you have, because often these kinds of work, at least at our universities or in the German system, is done within the faculties and within individual outreach activities or within city university museums or something. It's an open question. How much translation work did you need to do? How important is that in your work as being the mediator between the cultural sector and the players there and actors and the researchers? Is that more difficult than it is with natural sciences, or is it easier? Because we are now at the moment developing, we're actually building a venue that is kind of a third place where cultural sector and the university people can come and do their projects together, because the individual rules and restrictions of each side, let's say stage and laboratory, restrict cooperation in a way. And this is not only a physical thing, but also a mental thing. Sometimes not mental, but the approach to things is different, and you need to translate.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think in my own experience, this is something that is a very important part of running the science shop, and starting these cooperations is the first step, and that is communicating with the parties that you want to work together with. And this is something we really invest a lot of time and energy in making sure I personally to physically meet. Often, sometimes it's can only be done digitally, but there's a high preference for a physical meeting with the parties that ask you a question and want to work together, in order to really make sure that you're on the same level and that you're understanding what you're getting from the cooperation. I think luckily with the cultural sector, they're more akin to having a feel for philosophical thought and philosophical ideas. So when I work, for example, with the municipality, I have a lot more problem with this. It's a lot more difficult to try to explain what philosophers can provide, because sometimes they're really wanting to have exact answers, or really expecting, for example, that we can solve a problem that they have. So that takes more time, but investing in clear communication about this, and also really knowing for yourself what you're able to provide, really works with that. But it really depends on the context and the people that you work with, how much work that actually is. I hope this answers your question, and if not, please let me know.
Okay, are there any other questions? So it's a pity that we don't have time for like an exchange, because I think some of you will also have these experiences of working with the cultural sector. Oh, there's a hand now from Senia. Yeah, if I pronounce
Hi,
it
everyone.
right.
Yes, thanks. I was wondering what your experience is with working with teachers within the courses, because I could imagine sometimes you get a question and there's a specific course that already existed at the university and you want to match those. And how far are teachers open to do an extra work in, to connect with the cultural sector or to connect with the practice?
Yeah, I hope maybe that Vincent can provide an answer to this, because I'm in an awfully luxurious position where I am the teacher of the course. So I don't really get into a lot of trouble with myself regarding to this. So yeah, but
Vincent lost his connection, but maybe
okay.
I can answer that. So the more courses of the type you have which are challenge based, the easier it is to get your projects in, because then the teachers are actually looking for real life cases. So in our faculty, we have like 80 students in business and technology management that need to do projects every fourth quarter of the year. So they're quite happy if we can provide 5 cases for them. And also researchers that are more like in applied research. So for instance, in our faculty, environmental sciences, ecology, marine biology, they're more open to this. But I've also witnessed some researchers, for instance, in food research, if you have a project on the relationship between food and cancer, and it's a bit outside of the scope of knowledge, it gets more difficult to get them into this. But the main thing is that we take the overhead. So we do like the process management, and so they can concentrate on the scientific content. And sometimes that makes it interesting for them, because they get new networks, new angles to their research. They can tick their outreach boxes, if you put it very black and white. So, and it depends on the person. So we found out, for instance, we have the Young Academy here in Groningen. So these are the professors of under 35, and they're really very like forward thinking, with lots of ideals about creating a better world and connecting to society. So they're also like a big power factor in our university. They make sure that our university has an open science policy now, for instance. So these are depends a bit on the character of the person as well, and how well you do the pre-work that Yorick was talking about, like really sitting down with the organization, try to articulate the question to see what the organization has done itself already, what hypotheses they may have, what kind of facilities they may offer, etc. So because we do this extra work, it makes it feasible for the teachers to do it. Okay, any other questions? Because if not, I want to thank both speakers. And well, of course, if you want to know more about science shops, you're very welcome in the Living Knowledge Conference in the last week of June in Girona in Spain. So I put the link in the chat. And as soon as the video has been edited, I will send you the slides of this session and a link to the video. And by the way, if you have ideas for other webinars, or you want to speak in one of the webinars about your own work, you're very welcome. Just send me an email and we can set it up. And so if not, I want to thank you for being here, and good luck. Bye-bye.